Welcome to the Educator's Corner podcast, the show where we stay curious for a little bit longer. I'm Kai Basher, and in each episode, I'm joined by innovators from around the world as we explore the challenges, opportunities, and ideas shaping our schools and our communities. And if you'd like more insights and stories, subscribe to Kai Pod News, where I share reflections to keep the conversation going. You'll find the link to sign up in the show notes. In this episode, we're going to start to explore India's education system. With more than 240 million students, more than 14 million schools, and 10 million teachers, the Indian education system is the second largest in the world. So, why is my curiosity growing around this education system and its schools? Well, in recent years, we've seen an increasing number of Indian families joining us here in British School Muscat and also at our partner school down in Southern Oman, British School Salalah. And as we have more and more families and students coming from the Indian education system, I think it's really important that we have a better understanding of where they're coming from. There's also a surge in British international schools opening up across India, emphasising Indians' global educational significance. And I think as a member of the CBSE board, that's the Council of British International Schools, we are supporting an increasing number of British international schools opening up in India. And if we're going to help them, then board members like me need to better understand the education system which they're pitching into. So I think from CBSE's influence, that's the Central Board of Secondary Education, and that has a big influence, certainly on private education in India, and the ambitions of the National Education Policy, NEP, and the diversity across the regions of India. India's story matters not only to me, to this region, but it matters worldwide. So to start off our exploration into this Indian education system and its schools, I'm delighted to welcome Avyakt Sethi, visionary creator and host of Schoolcast, India's first dedicated school education podcast. Avyakt brings with him a unique set of insights based on conversations with voices from Indian schools and their communities. We're going to start by diving into questions from our listeners. Thank you very much, listeners, for putting those questions forward, and perspectives from across the education field. So join us as we pick up the conversation. Our first question comes from Hannah, a Kai Pod News subscriber from Hove in Sussex. And Hannah asks, India is a vast and varied country. How does education vary from state to state across the country?
So India is one country, but it's like 50 countries under one country. The education landscape varies from state to state, city to city. And India has a huge rural population. If I'm not wrong, about 70% of India is still rural and still in the villages. So the landscape is quite different because the kind of facilities we have in the rural areas versus the urban cities, the metros, is very, very different. The technologies they have access to. I think India still has only 53% of overall schools who have access to the internet. So we have a long way to go in terms of the rural education infrastructure.
So there's a big difference then if you're a student in a rural area and a student in an urban area.
Yeah, huge difference.
Our next question comes from Johanna Powell. She's a head teacher. She was TES Principal of the Year 2024. She's the Principal of Wales International School in Abu Dhabi. And here's the question from Johanna. I have quite a lot to do with Indian schools, and I find it really fascinating. I would like to know what Avyakt thinks are the best things about CBSE and British systems and how we could find the best of both worlds.
So CBSE, if you all know, it's the Central Board of Secondary Education. It's a school education board of India, and it's the biggest school education board in the world. It has about 30,000 schools and about 50 million students, if I'm not wrong. So, and across the world, we are not only in India, it's present across the world in 10 to 12 different countries. So CBSE, the main focus, their main strength or USP is the exams. So it is more exam driven and a heavy focus on academics, academic rigor and performance academically. But now, since the new policies have come in, the education system of India, it's evolving more and it's moving towards a holistic development.
What would you say then is the biggest difference that you're aware of between CBSE schools and, let's say, British international schools?
I think the biggest difference is the holistic development part. CBSE students are still told to be to be more focused on exams and getting more marks and academics, whereas the British system or other international boards are focusing on the holistic development of things. Overall, the sports, academics, arts, they are trying to balance everything.
But you are seeing a move now through the NEP, the National Education Policy, towards a more holistic, all-rounded education.
Absolutely.
Okay. The third and final question from our listeners today comes from Ben in London, and Ben tells us that he's making his way in the film industry in the UK. So sounds like he's a bit of a creative. And Ben has heard that science and mathematics learning is often viewed as a strength of India's education system. But his question is this, that he understands that there's a strong tradition of dance, music, poetry, literature and film in India. And he wonders, how is that reflected in the core curriculum?
Okay. So, lovely question, Ben. Thank you so much and all the best for your movies or acting career. So, STEM has always been very, very important in Indian families. So, when we talk about science and mathematics, it's always viewed as a backup plan. Like, if you do this, then in your career, you will get some opportunities. Parents and our older generations have viewed it like that. But the art, culture, heritage of India is deep. So we have years and years of history. I think more than thousands of years of history we have, and the traditions, the dances, the culture, everything is so deep and enriching. Bollywood is huge. And now we have regional cinemas all over India. So be it Bollywood, Telugu, we have multiple things. So now after the NEP coming in and the social media impacting us in a positive way as well. So now the importance of art, culture, heritage is increasing every day in schools. Earlier, we were only focusing on exams and the results and everything. But now the inclusion of art, inclusion of culture, inclusion of knowing about different foods, different states is very much there.
I was only there for a few days back in early September. Yeah, you kindly invited me to Delhi, but just the impression I had of Delhi was this really dynamic, lively place. And there's a huge amount of culture, whether we're talking about art, poetry, architecture. And it's interesting how that seems to have emerged maybe despite the education system. I wonder where that's emerged from.
No, that's emerged from the rich culture and heritage we have. If you check our history, it's thousands of years old. And we've gone through so much as a country. We've gone through that, evolved so much, and still we are evolving. Our PM Modi says, we are looking to become Viksit Bharat by 2047. Viksit Bharat means developed India.
Okay, so we can see, and I think we've already you've suggested in the NEP policy, there is an increasing focus now in the school curriculum on creativity and the arts. Coming back then to your podcast, and I think it's doing really, really well. What have been the main topics, or what's been the hot topic that's really engaging listeners on your Schoolcast podcast?
The hottest topic, I think, which has been is the teachers' burnout issue. Okay. So, post-COVID, because of the digital era coming in now, teachers' job earlier was supposed to be morning till afternoon. You go back home and you are done. But now, after we had 2 years of online classes and everything, now parents are connected with teachers 24/7. So any parent, any student directly contacts the teacher any time of the day. And it's becoming a huge, huge pressure for the teachers to handle everything. Their job of only teaching has transformed into a multiple role job. They have to be a counselor, they have to be a psychologist in some way, they have to be a teacher, they have to deliver their material, they have to check the exams, they have to make the assignments. So it's a very, very taxing job now.
Okay, so teacher burnout. And again, we are hearing that that's an issue right across the global education system. Okay. So I come back to this statistic because it really does trouble me, I think, when you've got 14 million schools, but only 10 million teachers. So it seems one of the big issues you've got teacher burnout, and that surely can't be helping with what seems to be, certainly in significant parts of the country, and especially the rural areas, a shortage of teachers. So can you sort of briefly explain to us within the NEP, the National Education Policy, are there strategies there that the government is trying to, or how is the government trying to address this chronic teacher shortage?
So a few weeks back, I was sitting with the Secretary Education of India, Mr. Sanjay Kumar, and he's been a pivotal part of this national education policy. So they are focusing a lot on upskilling since we have AI and many new things coming up each day. So now they are looking at the role of teachers, because the upskilling of teachers is very important for the development of children. So the teachers burn out and everything will go away when teachers are upskilled in what they are supposed to do, and they are taken away from the things they are not supposed to do, which is the admin work and everything. So the government is working a lot on that. So now we have CPDs, which is the continuous progressive development, if I'm not wrong. So teachers are supposed to finish 50 hours of certain subjects, which will help them in development.
And is that working, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is working. In a country like India, with around 1.5 billion people, everything takes time. Yes. It's a huge task, but we are heading in the right way, I feel, and it's going to be very nice in the future.
Thank you for listening to the Educators Corner podcast. It's been inspiring to see so many new listeners join us and connect with these conversations. Your support helps us bring on influential guests, dive deeper into critical topics, and amplify the voices shaping education's future. If you haven't already, please hit the follow button. It makes a huge difference to me and the team. Thank you. Reference technology and mobile phones and social media quite a few times in this conversation, Avyakt. How do you see mobile phones and social media impacting students in schools in India?
So if we look at social media and mobile phones, everything has a boon and a bane. So I think there should be a limit for students to use it, because when we are below 18 or below 16, the level of maturity we have and the level of experience and the level of life we've seen is a little less. So when we get into this, we see something wrong and we get stuck, and then the algorithm takes us only there, scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And we are just in the dark side of social media. But on the other hand, if I'm looking at the right things, if I'm learning something, if I'm looking at upskilling, I'm learning about AI, I'm learning about games. Today, gaming is a big industry. If I'm learning about gaming, so that is good. So it depends on how you use it. So that is very important. But I would say that today in this world, we can't live without social media and phones, and social media is extremely helpful for every child if used in a positive way.
So what do you think about the line which Australia is taking, where they're banning social media? I mean, I think you studied in Sydney for a while, didn't you, Avyakt? Yeah. So they are now banning, or in the near future, they're going to be banning social media for under 16s, I think for smartphones under 16s, and there's other countries which are following suit. What do you think about that? And do you think that's likely to happen in India?
No, to be honest, I am not aligned with that, because a country like Australia, in total, they have about 25 million people. So taking such a stance, and they can obviously experiment, take it, and then go back as well. But in a country like India, we have like 200 million people, more than that in our biggest state, only one state. So taking this kind of a stance has a huge backlash of economics and everything. You can't take such a stance on a social level. So I don't think it's a good step for India, and India is ever going to do it.
Okay. And is there any part of the NEP that addresses social media or smartphone use in schools?
To be honest, I'm not well versed with each part of NEP, but I think digital learning is a big emphasis of NEP.
Okay. So I think, visit about 400 schools a year, and most of those are in India. So you must see a lot of what's going on around the country. Have you seen any particular examples of practice that have really wowed you in the last year? And you thought, wow, that's incredible. I wish more schools would be thinking like that.
So India, to be honest, is an incredible country.
Right.
Because some schools in some places have less resources, because some schools in India have a fees of, say, if we talk about Omani Riyal, it's about 10 or 15 Omani Riyals a month. So there are many schools which have this kind of fees. So when you have less resources, you tend to experiment much more. So I went to a school in Delhi. What they do is they have a terrace area, a quite big open area. So they are making food from cow dung and they have processing units of that. And students are themselves going every day for about 30 minutes, 1 hour, and doing it themselves. So that is what real life learning actually is. Experiential learning, real life learning, creativity, whatever we talk about, that is the reality. They won't study this in the books. Even if they study the process, they won't understand.
I'm aware, with the work that I do on the board of CBSE, that's the Council of British International Schools. So we've got a network of well over 300 British international schools around the world. And I'm aware that there's a growing number of international schools that are moving into India, are looking at India as a potential growth opportunity for British international education. And actually, Denise Wheeler, who is responsible for a lot of the growth at CBSE, and she's done quite a lot of work in India recently. And I did ask her, I said, well, what would you like to ask Avyakt? And Denise said, or the question that she'd like to pose is, what would success look like for an international school coming into India? Or what does an international school coming into India need to think about if they're going to make a success of setting up an international school in India at the moment? What would your advice be to an international school, Avyakt?
So I think, first of all, it depends on where you're opening the international school. Because like other countries or many countries which are very small and the whole country has the same nuances and same cultural things, India has hundreds of different cultural nuances. So it depends on the state, the city where you're opening, and you need to understand the cultural nuance of that place. So once you go to the ground, you talk to people, you understand their characteristics. And being an international school, probably it would have a higher fees as compared to the other Indian schools. So you need to know what people are looking for and what is the gap actually there. Because right now, I think we have about, don't quote me on this number, but about 500 international schools across India. And being such a huge country, 500 is a very small number. So there is a huge gap which international schools can definitely fill, and parents are actually looking for it. But the main point of this is the cultural nuance. You have to get to the ground and understand what is the cultural nuance of that particular state or city.
And what do you think typically an Indian family might be looking for from an international school? What is it that an international school might be able to offer that an Indian school might not be able to offer?
I think we spoke about it earlier as well, the holistic development. The NEP 2020 is focusing a lot on holistic and all-round development, but still we are far away from it. But when we look at international students and international schools, the way their personalities are, their thoughts about contributing to the society, their thoughts about creativity, it's quite different, because I'm myself a CBSE school student. So when I meet people, I've studied abroad, I have friends from all across and different boards. So when I meet them, when I talk to them about their education, it's quite different from what we had. So that is a major hack and a major thing parents are looking for in India.
I've done a survey in the last few weeks on LinkedIn about what the aims of education should be. Really interesting feedback we've had around that. So what do you think the purpose of education in India should be for Indian schools?
I think the purpose of education anywhere in the world should be not to create a person which has good marks, or the person which has the best degree, or the person which has the best job, but a person who is an all-round contributing to the society and thinking good about the future of the country as well, not only their work. So a big change, a big difference I noticed when I went abroad to study is, when we from India have to go abroad to study, so you have to submit your social work certificates, what all you've done. Because I don't know about all the countries in the world, but I believe that many countries, they they are teaching their students to become good citizens first, and then everything else will follow. That is success for them. But in India, we are first looking at getting marks, and we are stuck in the rat race, and then we think about society and all. We are always taught that once you become independent, once you earn a good amount for yourself, then you can contribute to the society. Whereas it's the total opposite in the Western country. So I think that is what a successful school and a successful student would be.
That tends to resonate with the result of this LinkedIn survey, where character, work readiness, and happiness were coming out as key points for the aim of education. So bearing in mind that answer, Avyakt, so let's say for one day, you're the education minister in India, and you can change one thing in Indian schools. What would that one thing be?
I would change the rote learning concept, which we still have in the Indian schools. The government is trying, the policies are coming in, but we are still stuck in the rote learning, in getting marks, in competing. The rat race is still on. I want to tell students that you have to get out of the rat race. Even if you get a 50% out of 100, and you are specializing in sports, or you are specializing in arts, that is much better than getting a 70% and not specializing in anything. So just be self-aware. Self-awareness is the key, and then choose your path. Don't focus on marks. Marks don't matter. Self-awareness matters.
Okay, well, thank you, Avyakt, so much. You've given us a real insight into India's schools through the lens of Avyakt, the podcaster, the entrepreneur, the educational champion. We've covered so much in this conversation. It's been really fascinating to learn more about India's schools and the Indian education system. Is there anything that you'd like to share that we haven't covered? Just one more thing that you were really hoping that you might be able to share in this conversation today.
So the demographic dividend, which is the average age of India, it is 28 years. That is our demographic dividend. And if we compare it to other developing nations, China, US, European nations, everyone is around 40. Japan is around 44, if I'm not wrong. Okay. Everyone is above at least 38. So we have those 9-10 years extra, and we are roaring towards the future. We are getting everything, and we are moving towards becoming a developed country. And education is at the forefront of it. Government is supporting us. People are hungry, and India will become a Viksit Bharat, or a developed nation, by 2047.
Thank you so much for joining us here in Oman, and thank you also for all you are doing to help people to think about and to challenge and to shape, but also to champion what's going on in India's schools. Because it is a fascinating education system. It's going to have a huge impact on the world, and you are playing your part in trying to shape that and take it to a better place. So thanks, Avyakt, for joining us today. Reflecting then on that conversation with Avyakt Sethi, where we've just started to explore India's education system and its schools, what would my key thoughts be? Well, clearly, India's education system has a strong reputation for rigour and the exam process, particularly CBSE. So there's a strong emphasis on exams and rigour and consistency, and a real focus on maths and science and languages. And this clearly has an advantage where students are moving from place to place, whether it's within India or from countries outside India, to schools which are running the CBSE curriculum. There's a lot of consistency, and it's very easy to transition from one CBSE school to another. What's also clear, though, is that CBSE and the NEP, the National Education Policy, there is a significant shift towards a more holistic form of education. And I am actually starting to see that with some of the schools that I've had the privilege to work with in the last few months. So, for example, Avyakt Sethi at Podar, Mumbai, she's been sharing with me recently how remote teaching has helped her address teacher shortages at her school. And then in late August, I was invited by students at Aspe Newton Academy. That's another school in Mumbai. They invited me to be a guest on their student-led podcast. And I was so impressed with the way in which those students led that conversation. And then finally, here in Muscat, events like the Indian School Wadi Kabir Model United Nations demonstrate that debate, global awareness, and impressive learner leadership are a key development area for India's schools and India's education system. So I do appreciate, I am starting to learn a little bit about India's schools and its education system, and I'm really keen to learn more. So if you're in an Indian school, either in India or outside India, and you've got some examples or an example of how Indian education is evolving through a more holistic approach and what innovative approaches on student-centered learning, then please get in touch with me on LinkedIn and we'll continue the conversation. So if you want to stay in touch with what's happening in the international sector and education broadly, then please sign up to Kai Pod News if you haven't done so already. The link is in the show notes. And we look forward to continuing the conversations with you about educational issues right across the globe that are affecting our students, our schools, and their communities. Until next time, stay curious. You've been listening to the Educator's Corner podcast with me, Kai Basher. This show is created by British School Muscat and British School Salalah with post-production by Communicating for Impact. For updates and insights, remember, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Kai Pod News. Simply follow the link in the show notes to sign up.